Okay, the topic of today's talk, as you can see, is do not fall in love. At least don't fall in love with kind of video things. You can fall in love with your wife if you want, and that's probably a good thing. But when you're out shooting films or when you're making a pitch reel for somebody, the biggest mistake that people make, and they make a lot of mistakes, the biggest mistake people make is they fall in love with one thing. I have a guy who's working for me now, and he's pitching ideas to networks, and the problem is, I said you need 10 ideas and 10 pitch reels because maybe they'll like one, but you fall in love with one idea, the coal miners in New Jersey, and you spend the rest of your life working on that thing. If nobody wants it, nobody wants it, so you got to move on. This really comes into play when you go out to shoot stuff. Many years ago, when I was teaching at Columbia, and I was starting to date one of my students, which is another story I'll tell you about sometime, very, very early, I think the first time we ever went out somewhere, she was working on a project as a student at Columbia on a little film or video about a guy who was treating himself for AIDS. This is the 1990s, the early 1990s. So AIDS was a big story, and she found this guy who was self-treating himself, and he was injecting himself with intravenous drips of vitamin A. This was supposed to cure him. Nobody really knew anything about the thing except people were dying left and right. So she got permission from him, and they went to his house, and actually, I think, well, I don't want to get involved. The other person who was there, but I think there were three of us, another student who then now teaches at the University of British Columbia and has gone on to a great career, unlike my ex-wife, but that's another story. Anyway, so we went into this apartment, this little walk-up apartment in Manhattan, and there's the guy, and, you know, he's got the whole thing, and she's there with the camera, and I think it's the first thing that she ever shot, or they ever shot as a team, which is probably how they did it. And he went in, and the guy was preparing a chicken for dinner. So she went and she filmed the entire process of him making the chicken, and she was probably, and he cut the wings off, and he cut the legs off, and it was probably like half an hour worth of video. And then she thought we had enough, and we came home, and then she said, do you want to see what I shot? Well, you know, I mean, this is early in the dating, and, you know, it was stupid of me to do, but, you know, I was putting the moves on here. So I said, okay, sure. So we sat and watched this stupid chicken being prepared for half an hour in real time. And when it was over, she turned to me and she said, what do you think? And I said, you got one shot. And she said, what do you mean one shot? I got a half hour. Oh, that's kind of crap. I said, no, you got one shot. How long can somebody look at somebody cutting up a chicken? At that point, she was annoyed, and hopefully, if God was on my side, it would have been the end of the relationship, and I never would have married her and divorced her and gone through all the crap I went through with her. God was not on my side. God was out to punish me for dating a student, so she got over it, which was too bad. But she made a classic mistake, and that is when she went out to film something, she fell in love with one thing, which happened to be the guy cutting up the chicken. And you can film, it's like a documentary about how to cut up a chicken, unless you're Mark Bittman, nobody's particularly interested in that. But nobody else wants to see it. You see him cutting, that's why we do the 5-shot thing. Close up on the hands, close up on the face, wide shot over the shoulder, and we're done. I get it. He cuts up chickens. Let's move on to the next thing. Nobody's going to sit and watch a half hour of cutting up a chicken. People do this all the time. We run these video boot camps. We're doing another one here in New York in October, and we send people out to shoot, and as Lisa reminded me, somebody went out to the Cold Stone Cream, whatever the thing is, ice cream thing, and they shot like a real-time thing of them preparing an ice cream cone. I mean, no one who goes to it, even when you go to like Ben & Jerry's, you don't sit there and stare at the person making the ice cream cone step by step, and we weren't making an instructional video on how to make an ice cream cone. So here's what we tell people, and a lot of people don't really understand this. Whenever we go tell people to shoot, I always say, before you start anything, when you show up at the site, you'll be very excited, you'll want to shoot all kinds of stuff, relax. And in the meantime, what I want you to do is I want you to put the camera away for 20 minutes, and I want you to walk around the location. I want you to write down 7 events that catch your attention, and really write them down. And then when you go and shoot them, I want you to make sure you shoot all 7. Of course, you shoot them in the 5-shot way. The whole point of this is if you got half an hour to spend, whether it's, you know, an ice cream place or a guy trying to treat himself for AIDS or something else, if you have that half hour and you go and you shoot 7 different things that are going on there, regardless of what those things are, when somebody comes back and you cut the film together, I mean, how long is anybody going to look at anybody cutting up a chicken or making an ice cream cone? You know, 10 seconds and I got it. Let's move on to the next thing. So if you take that time frame, that half hour, and you spend the entire half hour shooting the guy cutting the chicken, you're going to have like living death, or maybe it's one of these like, you know, Danish slow TV things or Norwegian slow TV things. Doesn't really work in this country. But if you take that same half hour and you do, okay, I got a minute here, and I got a minute here, and I got a minute here, and you split it up, and you shoot as many different events as you can, which is why I tell you to go write down 7 things before you start shooting. It forces you not to fall in love with one stupid thing. People do this all the time when they go to barbershops, which I have beauty salons, which is a classic thing that we do. They'll get the person cutting the hair, and they sit on this thing for like 20 minutes as they cut. I get it. He cuts the hair, he uses the thing, he does this. Next, show me something else. Washing the hair, paying the bill, answering the phone, all that kind of stuff. The more things, the more events you can cram into your very short shooting style, the more depth and richness your final film has. Now, this is exactly the same approach to take when you get much more sophisticated and you go out to pitch stories or series to cable channels or whomever. I just got finished pitching to a bunch of guys on the West Coast, and I don't go with one idea. I go with 10 ideas, and I got 10 pitch reels, and, they look at them, and they always pick the one I never think they're going to pick. But it's not the one I happen to like the most. I'm still trying to pitch that one. But it's the other stuff that I just happen to have there because they go, what do you got? What do you got? What do you got? What do you got? The trick, the lesson here, the takeaway from today's little talk is, unless you're talking about the person that you're married to, do not fall in love with anything. It's the biggest mistake people in this industry make. It's you got to offer if you went into a very fancy restaurant and they said, we only have this, we don't have anything else, 9 out of 10 times you'll leave. That's why they have menus. You can have the chicken, you can have the fish, you can have the liver, if that's really what you want. You can have the salad, you can have the soup, you can have the eggs. The more crap you can bring to the table, whether you're pitching stuff or whether you're shooting, the greater the range, the more interesting, and the more people you'll attract. And also, let's face it, we all have really short attention spans because, one thing is on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. That's just the nature of our culture. So that's my pitch for today. And now, on to the next. I'll talk to you later. Bye.